talk about creation and evolution. You might wonder, why are we talking about that? Well, Genesis 1 through 25, I really wanted to get at the first chapter and go back over that before we do 26 through 50, because this is like the big theme of the book. Why is it called Genesis? Genesis is how things get started, how things get moving. And it's a question of anthropology.
You guys still can't see.
Yeah, this is a question of anthropology, and also this is not a salvation issue. So you can disagree with me or agree with me, whatever, but as a teacher, it's my responsibility to let you know what I think and why. You can go to heaven with different opinions on Genesis and how that worked. Was it 6 days? Was it longer? Where does evolution fit in? All that kind of stuff. That is not a salvation issue. But it's really important to me because I think it's an issue of anthropology. Anthropology, you think of people digging up like old ruins and stuff, but anthropology comes from the word anthropos, and that means human being, and it's the study of people. What's the nature of people? What are we? It's not just how did creation work, it's what is a human being? How do we get here? And what do we have to do with God, and why were we brought into this world? So we're going to talk about that, anthropology. What's really interesting is the word anthropos, which is human being, is often translated as a man in English, which is not proper, because anthropos is a human being, man or a woman, and very often it's translated man. And that's problematic because Marge can't get up and say, I'm a man, but she can get up and say, ego eimi ho anthropos, I'm an anthropos. So English is more sexist than Greek, which is real interesting. English tends to put masculine pronouns in where it's more neutral in Greek. German is also very neutral. They use the word Mensch, which means person, and they use Mann and Frau when it's specific. But in English we have the word man. French is also that way. The word l'homme, the man, is often used for the universal. So translation is complicated, but anthropology, what are you? What is your nature and how did you get here? And this has to do with creation and evolution. And we're going to look at Genesis 1. So let's look at that. Open your Bibles, get your phones out, whatever. We're going to look at Genesis 1, and I think Genesis 1, just from a human perspective, is one of the most sublime, beautiful passages ever written about how we got here. In the beginning, and there's no word for beginning in Hebrew, it's in the head times. It's the word head. And in Hebrew, the head is the source of everything. And so when Bible people say the man is the head of the family, that means he's the spiritual source for the family of blessing and other things. Now you can have Thanksgiving tomorrow, and if you've got a big crowd, 1 second, you've got a big crowd, and ask a 10-year-old who's going to say the blessing, they'll look for the rented male. Because that's just natural, that spiritual whatever comes through. We talk about the headwaters of the Mississippi, the source waters of the Mississippi. Same kind of word here. Go ahead, Harriet.
Well, since you said Hebrew doesn't have like a process, like they only have beginning and end.
They don't have past, present, future, so they have to use physical things to describe.
So is that why that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. They use the human body to describe everything. Blessed are the feet of those who bring good news. There's no word for anger in the Old Testament. God's nostrils flare. There's no word for strength, mighty right arm. They use the human body to describe everything around them. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Heavens and earth. Shemayim wa haaretz. The heavens and the earth. The heavens and the earth. The earth is feminine and the heavens are masculine. That's linguistic. We see that in the Christmas carol, Joy to the World. Joy to the world, the Lord, masculine, has come. Let earth, feminine, receive her king, masculine. Let heaven, masculine, and nature, feminine, rejoice. And over. That's the poetry you get out of the Bible. You get this sort of marriage relationship which doesn't come across in English quite as well. So the earth was without form and void. In Hebrew it's tohu wabohu, which is kind of fun to say, which which is chaotic and messy. The darkness was on the face of the deep, and who was hovering over the face of the waters? The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So people say, well, did the Holy Spirit show up in the New Testament at Pentecost? No, the Holy Spirit is all the way through the Bible. And once you see the Holy Spirit, you see him everywhere in the Bible. It was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. It was until we had Albert Einstein that we realized that the speed of light is the constant around which all of physics works. It's absolutely fascinating. So light is central, and you couldn't really do the rest of the stuff unless you have the physics of light at the very core of energy and mass, which go together with light. That's how that works. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So evening and morning was the first day. For Hebrews, the day, and also for Arabs, the day starts at sunset, not at midnight. So it's a whole different thing. The Sabbath starts when it gets dark on a Friday night. And they welcome the Sabbath on Friday night when the sun sets. And that goes until Saturday at sunset. So their calendar works a little bit differently than ours does. Their perception of days is a little different. So evening and morning, not morning and evening. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Now, Mayim is water, and Shamayim is heaven. And Shamayim is literally the sparkles on the water that the sun kind of dances across waters. And it's that thing you can't touch, you can't put in a bottle. It's just, heaven's a little bit out of our reach sometimes. So these are words that are used to describe things like water and heaven. That divide the waters from the waters. Then God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which are above the firmament, separating water. And hydrogen, of course, is the first of all of the elements in the periodic table. And hydrogen means water stuff, basically. Wasserstoff is what you call it in German. So you get this whole kind of centrality of water and the centrality of light and everything, which is hydrogen and light, photons. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. What does he keep saying it is?
Good.
Okay. Anthropology. Different denominations have different anthropologies. If you're a Calvinist, you've got a really low anthropology. We are totally depraved. In fact, if you want to look up, do this on your own. Tulip Calvinism, which is strict Calvinism. The first one is totally depraved. We are nothing on our own. Methodists, Wesley, a lot of Roman Catholics have a very high anthropology. We have the ability to choose. They believe in free will, and they believe in missions and those kind of things. And Methodists and Catholics are some of the best missionaries in the world because they believe that people have enough good in them to be able to choose for Jesus. Whereas a Calvinist would say, no, it's all preordained. You don't have the ability to choose. There is no freedom. So different denominations have high anthropologies and low anthropologies. Lutherans are right in the middle. Martin Luther said, simile justus et peccator, which means we're at the same time saints and sinners. We're complicated. You never get rid of either one of them. For believers, they're always a little bit of both. And you have to deal with that here in this world. So you get modern anthropologies like Lutherans, you get positive ones like Wesley, and like Catholics, you get negative ones like Reformed folks. And you have a different way of looking at anthropology. If you have a really low anthropology, you have to have a very high Christology. Why is that? You really need Jesus if you're totally depraved. Whereas, if you have a really high anthropology, there's a lot more language like, I'm cooperating with Jesus. I'm on his side. He's on my team. We're working together because I've got free will. So it's a different way of looking at anthropology. And creation and evolution is the key thing, I think, when it comes to anthropology. God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth, and it was so. We have life coming forth. This is called biogenesis. Biogenesis means how life gets started. It's a big problem for evolutionary people. We're going to talk about that because, well, I don't want to spoil it. And the earth brought forth grass and herb, and the herb that yields a seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit. The tree is in itself according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. Evening and morning, third day. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be the signs and seasons for days and for years. The calendar kind of comes together with the patterns of what's going on. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the sun, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And so evening and morning, there was the fourth day. And God said, let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures, let the birds fly above. You have plants first, and then you have animal life coming out of that. That's what the fossil record tells us. Let the birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was
Good.
And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. This is the first of the commandments, by the way. Not the greatest commandment, but it's repeated 5 times early on in the Torah. Be fruitful and multiply. That doesn't necessarily mean have children. That means to be productive, to be fruitful, and to multiply. And fill the waters and seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. So evening and the morning was the 5th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast on the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man. This is once again Adam. Adam means literally dirt. So let's make a dirt being in our image. According to our likeness, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Having dominion, our likeness. God, Elohim, is a plural. Sometimes it's short to just El for God, but it takes a singular verb. And there is a complexity to God within his unity. We talk about as Christians as the Trinity. Jewish people, really interesting, they see God as 10 in 1, which is super interesting. They call it the Sephirot. You want to look that up sometime. God has 10 different manifestations. And Christians, we talk about 3, but in any case, there's a complexity and a unity within God. God manifests himself in different ways. And so it's real super interesting stuff. You could look at that for months and months and get all excited about it.
They're not saying that God is 10 persons, but there's just...
He manifests himself 10 different ways.
Self,
Through law, through gospel, through different ways. He critiques us or he comforts us. He comes in 10 different ways.
Personality.
Yeah, exactly. He has 10 different ways he shows himself to us.
How do you spell that?
Sephirot,
I get-
Sephirot.
Okay.
And so there's a multiplicity in God, there's a complexity within him, but there's also a unity with God. God is one.
I wonder if it could be 10 different purposes too.
It is. If you study those, there are 10 different ways he connects with us.
If he manifests himself in 10 different ways, isn't he still one?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Well, they would all say yes.
But he's not 10 different people.
No.
No, that was what I was asking
Yeah.
too.
Well,
But he is
there's
3 different
The
people.
word Elohim is plural, but it takes a singular verb. So, yeah, there's God's complicated, but he's simple. So it's how he operates in the Bible. We don't know why we use the word Elohim.
Where was the Elohim again? Right there?
Yeah, Elohim is also in the Old Testament.
But where's the first mention?
in here.
Right, that
Let
verse,
us
I think?
let us make God, and let us make man in our own image.
Yes.
Okay.
1:1.
Yeah, let us.
All back, yeah, 1:1 is Elohim.
Okay.
And that brings, kind of emphasizes Jesus in the picture to make man, right?
Yeah, it's in our own image, and, well, it's gonna get better here, let me show you. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be what? Multiply. The younger people here are facing a big problem. The world's gonna depopulate. There's a population crash coming. It's pretty dramatic. People aren't having enough kids. Even in Africa, Asia, the birth rate's half what it was 15 years ago. Korea, 0.6. Every woman has on average 0.6 children in Korea. You need 2.2 just to repopulate what's there. Because a man and a woman have to have 2 kids, and they have to have 0.2 for the ones who die ahead of time. So you need 2.2 just to have 0 population growth. They have 0.6. Most of Europe is just over 1. And it's creeping into Asia, creeping into Africa, the Muslim world, everywhere. Birth rates are dropping everywhere.
What's the United States rate, do you know?
At least 1.6, something like that.
I heard from Elon Musk saying that Japan has more adult diapers than baby diapers.
They do. Japan they sell more adult diapers than baby diapers, which is not a good thing. So we've lost our sense that people are good. We've started in the last generation throughout the world to see people as a liability, not as an asset. And the less of them, the better. Well, what does that say about our anthropology? So these are all questions of anthropology. We're going to look at that.
We also hear that Muslims are having children far more than Christians.
Right, but only half as much as they did 15 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, it's dropping fast.
Wow.
And it makes you wonder about they say that they can make a man pregnant, or it's very close in technology to a man possibly being able to.
Oh, just let the first man have a baby?
But you know, and how they talk about the fetuses and developing and
That always
all
gets
that.
slow.
So how do you
We're
think
gonna-
that
that always
plays
gets
into
brought
all
up.
this?
We're going to talk about biogenesis in just a second.
Yeah.
And God said, see, I've given you every herb that yields seed. I've heard people say, justifying marijuana with this verse. See, I've given you every herb that yields seed. And I had a friend in Washington say, Bible says I can smoke weed. It's right here. So,
It doesn't say you can smoke.
no, I know, but this is just
Yeah, they
I
tabbed
think
it for
your
me.
friend got it wrong.
you can read a lot into Bible verses.
Yes,
It's
you
been
can.
done lots of times. That was, you and I both know who that was. I can't do it because it's on tape, but
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. So to you it shall be for food. Also, to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, everything that creeps on the earth, to which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was
Very good.
very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So, human beings were created good. And this is the problem with Calvinists. They go all the way over to totally depraved because of what Adam and Eve did. But here's the deal. I really, once again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm more Lutheran on this. I think we're complicated. We have a tendency towards sin which we never get rid of. But deep down inside, if you saw a baby sitting on the edge of a well, you'd grab for it to make sure it was okay. There's something good in people too. Even horrible people do really good things from time to time. And so we're kind of a mess when it comes down to it, I think. There's a good and a bad.
Couldn't you argue, though, that maybe part of that is the fact that we came from dirt? I mean, right, that's also true, right? That without God, we would have just been dirt.
Yeah, we would have been dirt. He breathed into us. But here it says, male and female, he saw it was very good. I mean, we were walking around and he said, I like that.
Sure, yeah, like after the creation.
Yeah.
Events, yeah.
And so Adam means dirt boy, and Eve is, in Hebrew, is Chava, which is the one who gives life. And in Greek, her name is Zoe, which is life. In the Greek Bible, it's Adam and Zoe, which is A and Z, which is kind of cool, but means nothing. But from which we get the word zoology and the zoo, the study of life. And so you get dirt and life giving. So we're going to talk about creation and evolution. I'm going to tell you where I stand. I don't believe in any kind of evolution, and I'm going to make a case for why I don't. And the case is not going to be based on just what the Bible says. If I had never seen a Bible, if I was raised by atheist parents, I still wouldn't believe in evolution. I think you can argue against evolution without ever opening the Bible. And I'm going to demonstrate how I think that's the case. Because I've tried to believe in evolution much of my life, and I can't. I'm just not convinced. Partially because I've spent so much time outdoors. And I've seen the design of the way things work. And that design is just amazing to me. You watch a hummingbird, if we could build hummingbirds, we'd win every war. I mean, they're just amazing militarily. What you could do with something like that is just, and they reproduce on their own. You don't even have to make new ones. It's absolutely amazing how nature works. So what I'm going to do right now is play an away game. I think Christians have to be able to play home games, proving things by what's in the Bible, and away games. If I were at a university, I think I could make these arguments in a science class, and I think I could win. And I want to talk about how that works, because I think when you're convincing someone who's an atheist who believes in evolution, you can't just use Bible verses. Why is that?
I don't believe it.
They don't believe in the Bible. It's like somebody walking in here using something in the Quran. We're not going to listen to that. They're not going to listen to it. And so what I want to do is show you that I don't think evolution works on its own merits.
Are you going to specify between micro and macro?
Yes, that's
Okay.
point 10.
Okay.
You have to wait to point 10.
Got it.
The most important thing is to define evolution. What do you mean by evolution? And here's what most people believe when they talk about evolution. It means life emerged without a designer. Life emerged gradually, without any intelligence backing it. That's the evolutionary thought. The whole point of evolution is to try to show that we don't need God to explain life or explain us. This is a question of anthropology. Were we brought here on purpose? And does your life have a purpose? Or are you the result of random collisions of atoms that over time organized into what you are? Who thinks there's a big difference between how you see yourself with those two things? And how we see ethics and morals? So it's here, in His image, He made us. If every human being is made in God's image, on which, by the way, our entire English-speaking legal system is built, without which the whole thing falls apart. Because this is why we read rights to criminals. Even if they've done a terrible thing, they're still made in the image of God. And to the better angels of our nature, we don't torture anybody, even if they're criminals. Why? Because they're made as much in the image of God as you are, or I am. And all of Western society is based on the idea that we're made in the image of God. And if you take that away, and we're just here randomly, then if you disagree with people, you can shoot them. And we've seen that, haven't we, recently? Why not? That person's not worth anything. We can kill other people. And they do that through, we did that in America. You know how Dr. Seuss got his start? With propaganda pictures of Japanese. And we dehumanize them, so it's okay to what? Shoot them. Well, you say, well, they started it, so we can we get into all kinds of ethical stuff, but when you dehumanize people, you can kill them. Because they have no intrinsic value, no value in themselves. And if God made us in His image, then we're all image bearers. And if everyone's an image bearer, even if they're not believers, we have to treat them with respect. This is my argument for the pro-life movement. We have to treat unborn babies as made in the image of God. If you don't believe a baby's made in the image of God, a fetus is made in the image of God, you can kill it. Because it's just in the way. Or it's not fully developed, or it doesn't vote yet, or fill in the blank. Or it can't tell you off, and it can't scare you, so you can do that. Do you see where being made in the image of God with the creation story is a big deal? And if we're here by random mutations, which is the whole point of evolution, I'm going to make the case that I don't think being made in the image of God, believing in a designer, is compatible with evolution. I'm going to talk to you about why I think that's the case. You don't have to agree with me, but I'm going to make a case for that. So what do you mean by evolution? And what I mean by evolution, what I'm going to talk about here, is people who believe that there is no design, no designer. It's a random process which happened over time which produced us. And that's what's taught in school. That's what's taught in biology class. You say, well, I believe in God doing that. Well, the whole point of the theory is you don't need God. That's the whole point. So number one. One reason why we have 10 of them. Get to 10, that's the micro-macro thing. Life is full of information. Life. Not the universe, but life. Living things, which we describe in the story, carry genetics. And it's full of information that with a purpose recreates itself. And it's so complex that we're just now getting to the point where we've been able to crack the genome and figure out what's even in there. Because in every cell of your body, you've got more information in your little double helix DNA than all the computers in the world up until recently. In every cell of your body. It's just unbelievable how much information is in every cell of your body. And information, not just data, but information that does something. Who here gets funny translated Chinese directions when you get something and you're putting it together?
Oh, yeah.
They try to describe what you're supposed to be doing, but it's actually quite comedy. You know, push button inside back or something like that. Okay. That's together. But it's information with a purpose. DNA isn't just chemicals. It's like coded instruction manual that gets things done. It has purpose to it. Random processes don't create detailed instructions that actually work. Even Chinese people trying to speak English when they write these things often don't do that great a job, even when they're trying to. Everywhere we see information, it comes from an intelligent source. There's nowhere you can find information that's actually doing something that doesn't come from a human designer who's trying to get something done. And DNA does that. It actually has a purpose. That's not the best one, though. You get better as we go. This is the best one. Matter can't make mind. Your consciousness is one of the greatest mysteries of science. It's called the hard problem. Get back to the thing here. The hard problem of consciousness, or the hard problem of philosophy. Why is there something inside of you that perceives something? And what is that about you, yourself, your soul, that sense of being, that sense of you? David Chalmers, who's a real weirdo, and Christoph Koch, who's an atheist and a neurologist. 27 years ago, they made a bet. And it was a very famous bet, in a big debate. Chalmers is, I don't think he's really a believer, but Christoph Koch is a total atheist. And he was saying how eventually science will explain consciousness. And David Chalmers, who's a philosopher, said, I'll bet you a case of the most expensive wine in the world that 25 years from now you will have made no process. You'll have made no progress on being able to describe consciousness with physical evidence. And Christoph Koch says, you're on. Well, in 2023, David Chalmers collected a big case of wine. Because there is no evidence at all that anything physical is creating your consciousness. There is no connection, there's no causal connection between your consciousness and your brain seems to host your consciousness. There's no evidence that it produces it. Does that make any sense? Our brain is not creating your sense of who you are, your identity. It's a great mystery. It's called the hard problem of consciousness, the hard problem of philosophy. Look it up. There's YouTube videos on it like crazy, but neurologists have been scrambling for years to try to describe our sense of awareness from physical causation. They can't. They're no farther along with that than they were 100 years ago. There's something very hard to crack about why you are what you are. And the fact that most of the cells of your body weren't even there 7 years ago, because your body continues to rebuild itself. It's kind of like these bands that make the rounds at state fairs. You know, we went to see Queen and there's only like 1 or 2 people left in the band. At what point is it no longer the Eagles or Queen, or at what point is your body no longer the same one it was? But yet you still remember what you did when you were 10, and you still, that's you. Even almost none of those cells are still there.
As those cells are being reproduced, the new ones contain the same DNA as the previous ones.
They do.
Now that's fascinating.
It's incredibly fascinating. Why? Once again,
But it can be altered.
it is, but we can't create it. Here's another thing we're talking about.
The DNA.
I don't understand.
You can alter DNA.
The other half comes from the spouse.
You can alter DNA by being out in the sun too long. That's a whole other thing. But we'll get to that in just a second. Matter can't make mind. Our thoughts, feelings, and self-awareness aren't just chemicals. Consciousness doesn't appear naturally from non-conscious matter. Non-conscious matter doesn't create conscious matter. And there's no evidence that it ever has, ever will, or could. Evolution can explain behavior, but not what it feels like to be aware. And so the fact that you're a you is an incredible miracle.
The level of identity obviously is a different degree, but I've heard people talk about how, like, if you were to replace every part of a ship,
Yeah,
would it
there's a
still
word
be,
for that. It's just still the ship.
yeah, would it still be the ship?
We're very close to that with our Yukon. We've replaced almost everything.
Yes.
What is it still the Yukon?
And yet it still has that identity.
Identity.
Yeah, you got it.
And it's even more so the person, because you've got that sense of remembering, and that was me. I'm still responsible for what I did when I was 10, because you have a sense that
Yeah.
that was you.
Even all your cells have at that point
Changed.
completely changed
Completely changed.
and new, yeah.
Number 3, life needs all of its parts to work. Many systems, like a cell, won't work if anything is missing. Just like your car engine. If something major is missing there, no battery, no gas, it doesn't work. Early life had to have had metabolism, DNA, membranes, and energy systems all working together in every cell. And also mitochondria. Had to have all of those things working for life to work. If one of them is missing, it doesn't happen. Random processes can't assemble these fully functional systems gradually. My favorite example is birds' wings. I was having an argument with a evolutionist in Iowa many years ago. We were having lunch, we had a big table, and he said, he was saying, oh, you got to believe in evolution. I said, no, I really don't. And I asked him a question: how long would it take for a bird that has no wings to gradually develop the kind of wings that would work until it could fly? And he said, probably, I don't know, 150, 200 million years. So I said, all that time it wouldn't be flying. And so it would actually make itself less fit all the time, because it's got these big flappy things that don't do anything. And eventually, after 150,000 or 150 million years, it could fly. So it would be a disadvantage to be growing wings until it can what?
Fly.
Until it can fly. So the idea that you could just start developing these things over long, millions of years' time. And I said, well, so why would a bird do that? What's the point of a bird growing wings for 150 million years that don't work? Those birds would just get eaten because they have these big flappy things that wouldn't do much good.
Couldn't the inability of us to clone anything just blow evolution out of the water?
Well, we can clone little things, and they tend to die and get weird. But we're going to talk about some of that with biogenesis again. That is coming.
But can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Gosh, it slipped my mind, but the guy that was the quarterback, real famous for, Patriots. Now he's a
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. He was being interviewed the other day, and he has this wonderful dog, and he had him cloned, and they were talking about that on the air. Like, I didn't realize that he was.
Well, I've gone down to the Bahamas, and it was Caribbean somewhere. I'm cloning Wendy just in case something happens to her. But because I'd like to have another one in case we have a spare one.
Oh, I see. Oh.
So is this really Wendy, or is this like a?
I'll have to kill you if I tell you.
I don't even know.
So basically, unless everything is there, it doesn't work. And all of these things would have to simultaneously come together at the cellular level for these things to work. Number 4, life is too improbable. The chances of creating even one functional protein by chance, practically zero. Evolution can't start until there's already a working system. Things can't evolve until life starts. You have to actually create life. People have been trying to create life in the laboratory for 200 years. We're going to hit lightning on these things. We're going to do all of this stuff to try to get, but what are they doing? That's design. They're adding design and purpose to the experiment, and it still doesn't work. Nobody's been able to produce from non-living parts a living thing that will actually have the capacity to do things that life does. And they've tried really hard, because if you could create life from not life in the laboratory, which people have been trying for generations, then you could say, well, hey, but then you'd still say, well, that was design.
Yeah.
But even that, they can't do it. It hasn't been done. There's no rival life on this planet that people are creating. That doesn't work.
Evolution, in its definition, requires there to be matter first before evolution can begin.
And you have to also have something living that evolves. What I'm
That's
saying
exactly what I'm saying. There
Yeah.
has to be some matter or living
is
thing
living matter.
that is already in existence before it can start to
To evolve. Right, but
Right.
biogenesis or life getting started, it's very unlikely that that would ever happen randomly, because all those parts have to come together, the battery, the engines, the whole thing has to be working at a cellular level. It has to be reproducible, be fruitful, and if life that is not multiplying is not living. You have to have the potential to reproduce. That's how life works. So this is the lab where they're trying, I'm just making this up, but they're trying to create life out of non-life, which nobody's able to do, even with design. And there's something called Fermi's paradox, which is another fun thing to look up. Fermi's paradox, which is, there's billions of galaxies and billions of stars, and there's all this stuff out here. So the chances of life out there must be somehow out there. Then why has nobody ever contacted us? That's Fermi's paradox. If the universe is so full of life, why, except for some weirdos, do we never see it? It's usually not reputable, and it's not something people can actually prove. If, oh, I saw something in the sky, well, we've all seen weird stuff in the sky. But you think that if there was intelligent life out there, it's everywhere, somebody would have gotten in touch with us at some point. Or we'd have some evidence of broadcast of some kind, or we have nothing. It's just some, and I grew up in the 60s like some of you did, and my teacher, Mrs. Cook, said, there's canals on Mars. People used to think that. There's canals on Mars. The word Martian was the word we used for alien. We didn't say alien, we said Martians.
Yeah.
I grew up expecting to meet Martians. And Star Trek came out in the 60s, and everywhere they went, there was what? Life and people and all this stuff. Everywhere they went, there's another planet with people with green horns coming out of their head or something. There's something going on.
And they all spoke English.
And they all spoke English. Very well. Yes, and yes. And what's fascinating about that is the more we look, the deader the universe looks. We don't have any evidence yet. We're all over the solar system. We're looking for like anything, a cell, anything, and we can't seem to find it. And Mars is just a dead Siberia, is what it looks like. And that's kind of disappointing, because I wanted to, it'd be kind of fun to like Star Trek to zoom around and talk about these people, but it just doesn't seem to be the case.
But all that stuff is really made for us by God, right?
Who knows? It's huge. It's huge.
I can't help but think when you're talking of people that see spirits or people that have died or whatever, but that would be existing.
Well,
That would have been created by God and existing.
that's the aliens calling us now.
I just caught that, I'll go out of here.
Naturalism. I want you to look at the word naturalism. Naturalism sounds like a good thing. we're just natural. You make me feel like a natural woman, or whatever. Naturalism philosophically is the belief that everything is mechanical. Naturalism is the belief that there is nothing supernatural. Carl Sagan, his whole thing on billions and billions, what do you call that, cosmos?
Cosmos, yeah.
We're showing our age, some of us. Billions and billions of years. The universe is all there's ever been. It's all there ever will be. And he was a naturalist.
That's a pretty good impression.
It's a very good one. I watched the whole series. But he was a naturalist. He believed that if you can't measure it, if you can't take a picture of it, if you can't weigh it, it's not real. That's naturalism. Naturalism can't explain everything. It can't explain consciousness. That's a big one. A really big one. It can't explain biogenesis, how life could get started from non-life, or why the universe exists at all. Why is there something rather than nothing? What brought it here? Where did the universe come from? What was before this Big Bang thing? This is called circular epistemology. If you look here, epistemology is the study of what we can know, what we can't know. How many things can we know? If you're a naturalist, you say, unless I can measure it, we can't know it. Now here's the problem. Naturalist evolutionists will always say, unless you can prove things on my terms that there's a God, in other words, unless you can measure it, take a picture of it, whatever, then I won't believe it. But that's circular reasoning because you've already defined the supernatural out of the equation to start with. You've said that you won't listen to anything supernatural. You won't listen to anything that's not measurable, that's not scientific. Well, if you won't listen to that, then you'll never believe in a supernatural creator. And this is what we call circular reasoning. We do it with the Bible too. I believe in the Bible because the Bible tells me to believe in the Bible, which doesn't work with people outside the Bible. It doesn't work with non-Christians because it sounds circular. And naturalists have their own circular thing too. Unless you can show me a picture of God, but God by definition is not part of the creation. If he were part of the creation, that'd be different, but he created the creation. If he was part of the creation, he couldn't be the creator. And so you've got all of these kinds of philosophical issues going on. Circular reasoning. Assuming only natural causes guarantees a natural explanation, whether it makes sense or not. If you set the rules of the game that only natural things will be allowed into the experiment or into the argument, then naturalists will always say, well, evolution then. Even if it's unlikely, they have to go with that because there is no supernatural intelligence on the outside, which actually doesn't make a lot of sense. This has to do with postulates and axioms. How many of you hated geometry class when you had to do proofs? If you remember proofs in geometry class. Postulates and axioms. Most scientists are terrible epistemologists. They're very narrow in their thinking about what you can know. And the truth is 80% of your behavior has to do with things you can't measure. Loyalty, love, beauty, duty, good and evil. Science can't tell us a thing about ethics.
Empathy.
Yeah, empathy is another thing. 80% of your decisions in life have to do with things you can't measure. And your whole life is built around those things. Science has nothing to say. If you say, I believe in science, well great, then you have no ethics because science has nothing to say about ethics. Science just gives you facts and figures. There's no scientific argument for or against abortion. All they can tell you is scientific figures about how these things happen. And so without the supernatural, we have no ethics. We have no sense of loyalty, of trust, of beauty, of aesthetics, any of that stuff. 80% of your life is non-scientific. And that doesn't mean it's stupid. It means that stuff can't be measured. Someone once said, I'm a scientist, but science is not worth dying for.
Oh, true.
Because it is not, it doesn't give us any values. True science doesn't give us values, it just gives us information. And you have to decide on your own, oh, I believe in science. Well, good for you then. Well, what do you believe about the death penalty? What do you believe about the legitimacy of war and when you can fight it? Those are ethical questions. When can you use force against someone? When can't you? Science says nothing about that. So naturalism, postulates and axioms. Euclid wrote something called geometry. He was a Greek philosopher. And you studied Euclidean geometry in 9th grade, 10th grade, whenever you did it. And it's all based on postulates and axioms which are not provable, and theorems which are built on the axioms and postulates. And those are provable, based on your axioms. Euclid challenged the world to come up with any thought system that didn't have at least 5 axioms. That didn't have at least 5 faith statements. And he said most thought systems have at least 20 that are not provable. For instance, a scientist thinks, oh, I do science. But they have a lot of postulates. The universe is uniform. If we measure it here, it'll work over there. My observations, if they're reproducible, will be accurate. All kinds of postulates go into the scientific method, which are not provable.
Are these something like assumptions?
Yes, you have.
Okay.
What Euclid was saying is you have to make at least 5 assumptions to think anything. And those assumptions will be by definition not provable. That's the whole point of his geometry. Lincoln only had like 5 books. He read them over and over: Blackstone's Commentary on the Law, the Bible, and Euclid's Geometry. It teaches you how to think. It's a study in epistemology. And scientists make you think it's all facts, but it's not. They have certain assumptions they have about the world. Another one, everything's naturalistic. There's no supernatural whatever. That's an assumption, which is not provable, which they build their whole naturalistic science on. Most scientists are terrible epistemologists because they don't realize they're building their skyscraper on their own foundation, which is a faith statement. Does that make sense? I give you some scary looks here. This is pretty high-end philosophy.
I love this.
Number 6, one species can't turn into another. You can't make one species out of another. Small variations within a species are observable, but no species has been shown to give rise to a completely new species. And there's lots of species. Large changes require new organs, body plans, information, no known mechanism. There's no scientific explanation for that. How does one species create another one? And there's no gradual change in these species that turn into another species. You've got 23 chromosomes. Other species have different numbers of them. Human beings can't produce another species that has a different number of chromosomes. That doesn't work. And besides, if you want a new species, you've got to have a male and a female of the new species too, otherwise they can't reproduce. So the idea that we gradually ooze from one into another, there's no evidence in the fossil record for any of that. Species just plain appear. They just appear. They have homeostasis for a long period of time and they go extinct. And there's huge waves of new species all through the fossil record. There's 4 or 5 big ones. Explosions of new species that come out of nowhere. They last for a certain amount of time and then there's a mass extinction. And then there'll be another explosion of species and there'll be another massive extinction. And during that time in between, the species don't change at all. They're very conservative. They stick with what they're doing so that they can continue to reproduce. Because if you vary too much, you can't reproduce with the rest of your species. So you've got these massive things going on. 7, the fossil record doesn't show slow and gradual change. Species just appear. There's no semi-whale. All of a sudden there's whales. And before that, there were no whales. There's no gigantic lumbering land animal that just got used to the water and stayed there and started blowing air out of its top of its head. It just, all of a sudden there are whales. And so you have species and then you don't. You don't have these gradual things in between. Darwin expected gradual changes over millions of years. Fossils show species appear suddenly and stay the same for a long time. Punctuated equilibrium. I went to an evolutionary conference because I was at the University of Chicago and they were having one, and the University of Chicago is awesome. And I was at the Lutheran Seminary across the street. So whenever they had like a big conference, I would just go and pretend like I was a part of it. And I walked into this big World Evolutionary Conference. And they were all pulling their hair out because they couldn't figure out how to explain the difference between one species and the next one and where the connection is. And they came up with a word while I was there, punctuated equilibrium. In other words, things happen real fast and they stay that way. Which is just a way of saying we don't know, but we're going to put a word on it. And you can look that up, punctuated equilibrium. That came out of the Chicago conference where they said, well, that's how we're going to describe those things. So, yeah, it's fascinating. And here's just a little picture I have of the mass explosions of species and all of the mass extinctions that come later. But during the
side just a little bit so we can see your picture.
But during the time where the species is there, it doesn't change. You could take a man from 50,000 years ago, dress him up like us, give him a haircut like us, and you couldn't tell the difference. We don't change over time. My prayer partner is African American, Walter Jackson, and I said, well, you know, you must have that curly hair to protect you from the heat or something, and that must be from the African background. He says, you kidding? He said, wear a wool cap on a hot day. We don't want this. and black people can handle the sun better, but they can't handle heat better. If you go to Chicago, and go to the beach, they all have tents. Because the heat is really, why? Because what color car do you get if you live in Arizona?
White.
White. So the idea that if you're from a certain part of the world, that created a certain species, the reason we have different traits is because those traits got reproduced over time. If you got blue-eyed parents, you're more likely to have blue-eyed kids, everything else. And it's very little to do with where we are. But evolutionists will always try to say that it does. We're going to talk about that with microevolution in just a second. 8. New species don't just appear naturally, but they do appear. Creating new species needs new genes, new body structures, new functions, all at once. It can't happen gradually. It's got to all work. Come up with a new model of car, all the parts have to work. Random mutations can tweak things, but they don't invent fully functional novelty. That just doesn't ever happen. 9. Survival of the fittest, which was Darwin's thing, isn't enough. Natural selection only preserves traits that already exist. It cannot create new traits. Diversity, talk to any farmer. Genetic diversity creates healthier crops, not just going after the top ones. We want, actually, having handicapped people in our gene pool is good for the gene pool. You want as much diversity as you possibly can in the gene pool to keep the hybrid vigor working. If you have too many people mating with too many people that are like them, what do you call that? Inbred.
Oh.
I'm partly inbred. In Norway, my ancestors on my father's mother's side lived on a fjord up from Stavanger, and there were only 2 farms on the fjord. It goes for miles. The Underbergers and the Bertholms, and for 10 generations they married each other. Why? Because that's as far as you could paddle. I mean, so we don't have a family tree, we have a family rope up in that part of the whole thing. And that's not good. That's not good. You don't want to just reproduce the best with the best. You want to have as much genetic diversity as possible, which creates a healthy species. Which is why it's so important to protect all human life, because we want as much diversity in our gene pool as possible, not as little.
Look at the first parts of Genesis, where people were always marrying a relative.
Yes, and look where that got them. All kinds of
It
problems.
kind of had to be that way, though, the way the world started.
Or God created different people in different places, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Hey, I got a real stupid question to ask, but since
We're gonna do questions in a second, but I wanna get through this because we're
Oh, okay.
running out of, we're running out of time. Eugenics versus hybrid vigor. Eugenics is to try to narrow the gene pool. And hybrid vigor talks about diversifying the gene pool. And hybrid animals and plants and everything else tend to be healthier. There's something really good about that. Ask any farmer, they're looking for hybrids when they come up with corn, wheat, or anything else. Because there's natural immunity to all kinds of things. You don't want to just have people mate with people just like them. You end up with Norway. Darwinists talked about natural selection. But now, by the way, scientists don't talk about natural selection anymore. They talk about random mutations. Because they realize natural selection doesn't work anymore. But they still talk about it. And this is the power of narrative. When I say natural selection, the survival of the fittest, we've all heard that. It's a very powerful narrative. And it kind of makes sense to us, kind of like communism. It's a very powerful narrative. And even if it doesn't work economically, it keeps coming back. Why? Because it sounds, there's something about the sound bites that works on people's psyche. We all put in what we can and we all get back what we need. That sounds nice. And it makes sense. We want everyone to have the same income. That sounds good somehow. That's how things work, and that's also how things work here with narrative. Darwin, even among evolutionists, university evolutionists don't believe Darwin anymore. They have a different form of evolution, which is based on mutations now. But the narrative is still floating around, isn't it? We still think of survival of the fittest. That's Darwinistic. We talk about those things. 10. Promise we get to this. Breeding isn't proof of evolution. People say, well, look at dogs, look at horses. You know, all these different breeds of dogs and horses. That's proof of evolution. Well, you could say that's microevolution, but it only works with human intervention. Humans separate out certain traits with dogs and horses to create species that hunt a certain way, that behave a certain way. Put it this way. If you took all the dogs in the world and put them on an island and had no human contact, within 5 or 6 generations, they'd all be wolves. Because that's what they came from. We've separated the traits out, but that's not natural. We've separated the traits out to create poodles and hunting dogs and all the different things over generations, which you can do. Horses the same way. To make a faster and faster horse, you breed out certain things. But if you put all the horses on one place, they would all turn into the original horse in a few generations, because all of those things are artificial. We artificially separate out the traits, and it wouldn't never happen naturally that way at all. Forrest Fensel, this is really interesting. Forrest Fensel used to go to this church. He passed away, and he was a serial entrepreneur. He's one of those guys that just kept doing big things and starting them. And he got the contract after 9/11 to redo the air conditioners in the Pentagon, to make them impervious to biological warfare. That was his job. And so he sent all of the biological warfare strains that were known to 2 separate universities, and he asked them to run them through as many generations as he could, so he could get as many variants as he could, so that he could design air conditioners that would be impervious to those variants. How's that for a job for whatever? And after the results, because you can run them through generations really fast, because bacteria reproduce quickly. And both universities, he asked them, so what's the variation you came up with? None. All of the bacteria, when left on their own, reproduced exactly what they were before. And reproduction is incredibly conservative. It tries to preserve the DNA of what's going on. So he ended up with a pretty easy job. He just ended up having to work with the ones that he had. So it's real interesting how microevolution only works with human intervention. Different traits that come out of that we separate through breeding of horses, dogs, those kinds of things. Because every species is incredibly conservative. DNA tries to maintain human reproduction capacity. And if you vary too much from each other, you can't reproduce. You end up with mules. And that doesn't work real well. So getting back to this, if humans stopped intervening, the traits would blend back naturally. Breeding is artificial, not natural microevolution. It's artificial, and it's done that way. So, discussion time. If your 10th grade daughter comes home from biology class and said, our teacher told us that we're here by natural forces, what do you say to her? Number 2, what if evidence points to all matter having some consciousness, design, or purpose? If you look at quantum mechanics, if you look at an electron, it will move if you look at it.
But
There's-
they never stop moving.
But it'll move because you're looking at it, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
It seems at the subatomic level, there seems to be consciousness at that level. What if everything is conscious? What does that say about naturalism? What does that say about the supernatural? Well, if everything is conscious, then that makes sense that God is conscious designing all this stuff. What if the reality of the world is consciousness and energy and not matter? You're sitting on a chair, but it's mostly empty space between the atoms. And it's being held together by a lot of interesting stuff which we don't fully understand. What is the social downside of telling students that they're the result of random collisions with no design or purpose?
So what?
Yeah.
exactly, no purpose.
How can you have self-esteem if you're a result of,
Random.
yeah,
It's like where you were saying about people just murdering each other.
yeah, why not? Why not? If we're not made in the image of God, who cares? If I'm just here by accident, I'm just going to get what I can and beat up on everybody else. Why wouldn't I? What wisdom do you see in the Genesis story now that you have spent some time thinking about it? And the last one, second to last one, what do you say to someone who says evolution is the way God did it? This is the one I have the most trouble with. Because the whole point of the evolution theory is that there is no designer. That is the whole point. And to say God was just watching it, then he wasn't involved. It's just like watching this thing happen. And it would have gone just as well without him. You run into a real problem with that.
But that question, does it really make sense? The question?
I think a lot of people adopt that, kind of believe in the theory that God was just like a clock maker who built the clock and then set it on the shelf and
Yep.
left it.
Well, that's in that Bette Midler song, he's watching us from a distance.
Yeah.
He's not really
Like
involved
he's
in our
not
lives.
involved in our lives, but he created it.
But in the Bible, I read about a guy who's very involved in our lives.
Well, and what about the theory of intelligent design?
Well, yeah,
Where does that fit in all
well,
of this?
intelligent design is another way of saying God made things. I mean,
Right, well, yeah, exactly.
And without design, how could we possibly be here? Where is all this coming from? How does all this stuff work so well? I mean, Bob had a job where he got to watch all these different species, and it all works. And to see all the different organs and all the different things, I mean, you saw design at an amazing level.
A lot of similarity
Yeah,
from species to species,
yeah.
but yet there were distinctive differences.
Oh, yeah. I bet you wish you had the back of a horse right now. Because you're going to horse surgery, horses have
I
great
do
backs.
not like to be in the back of a horse.
No, you'd like to have the back of a horse.
You would like to have.
Nice and strong.
his
Yeah.
as yours. Yeah,
For the strength,
Yes.
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the questions I've got is what's the difference between playing a home game and an away game as Christians? If you say, well, the Bible tells me this, well, that doesn't work when you're playing an away game. The best thing to do when you're playing an away game is question people, like I did with that guy in Iowa. How long would it take a bird to develop wings gradually to the point where it could actually fly? And it would be a liability, a growing liability the whole time. Ask questions that challenge people.